The Vrax Dominion believed they had finally won. For nearly 20 years, the war had consumed entire sectors of the galaxy. Worlds burned, fleets vanished, trade routes collapsed. And through it all, one name repeatedly appeared in military reports: Commander Ethan Ward. To the Vrax, he had become something between a soldier and a nightmare. Entire invasions had failed because of him. Supply lines disappeared after he passed through his system. Strategic facilities exploded days after his arrival. Several Vrax admirals had lost their careers trying to predict him. One lost his fleet. Another lost a planet. A third simply disappeared. The Vrax hated him, but more importantly, they feared him. That was why his capture became a galactic event. Every major network carried the announcement. Every military command celebrated. Every Vrax citizen heard the same message: the war's most dangerous human had finally been captured. Commander Ethan Ward sat motionless inside a reinforced containment chamber as the prison transport crossed deep space. His hands were restrained. His legs were restrained. A suppression collar surrounded his neck. Dozens of weapons pointed toward him. The guards looked nervous. That amused him, because they were still treating him like a threat. They should have. The transport eventually arrived at Black Site 7, the most secure prison station in known space. The station orbited a dead world far beyond major trade routes. No civilian traffic. No nearby colonies. No rescue possibilities. Perfect. At least according to the Vrax. The intake process lasted 6 hours. The officers cataloged everything: his sidearm, his combat knife, his emergency tools, his tactical computer, his armor, his communicator, his survival equipment. Even his boots were taken apart. Every component scanned, every piece stored separately. The Vrax were determined to remove every possible advantage. One officer seemed especially proud of the process. He stared at Ethan through the security barrier. "You are harmless now." Ethan simply smiled. The officer didn't like that. Most prisoners begged. Some threatened. Others broke. The human merely smiled. That smile lingered in the officer's thoughts long after Ethan disappeared into the prison. The cell itself was impressive. 6 meters wide, 5 meters tall, energy barriers, motion sensors, atmospheric monitors, automated surveillance. There were no weaknesses, at least none that the Vrax could see. Ethan spent the first 3 days doing almost nothing. He observed. He listened. He memorized. Guard schedules, maintenance patterns, shift changes, security procedures. The prison believed observation worked only one direction. That assumption would become expensive. By the 4th day, Ethan knew more about the facility than some of its employees, and he hadn't taken a single step outside his cell. The first strange event happened during a routine maintenance cycle. A surveillance camera malfunctioned. Nothing unusual. Systems failed occasionally. Technicians repaired it. Life continued. Then another camera failed. Then another. Then another. The incidents occurred in completely different sectors. No obvious connection existed. Engineers blamed faulty components. Replacement units were installed. The failures continued. Prison administrators became irritated. Not concerned, just irritated. Meanwhile, Ethan spent his evenings exercising. The guards often watched. Some found it entertaining. Others found it unsettling. The human maintained a strict routine: strength training, cardiovascular conditioning, flexibility exercises, mental drills, hours every day. One young guard eventually asked why. Ethan's answer seemed harmless: "Because one day, I'll need it." The guard laughed. Nobody escapes Black Site 7. Nobody. 3 days later, that same guard disappeared. The alarm sounded at 2:17 station time. Entire security teams mobilized. Search protocols activated. Internal scans began. Nothing. No body. No evidence. No breach. No explanation. The guard simply vanished. Administrators blamed desertion. The explanation made little sense, but it was convenient. Then another employee disappeared. A technician this time. Again, no evidence. Again, no explanation. Again, no answers. The station's leadership became concerned. Security reviews intensified. Surveillance increased. Patrols doubled. The disappearances continued. Nobody noticed Ethan watching quietly from his cell. Nobody considered asking what he thought. That was their second mistake. The first had been capturing him. A week later, Warden Crass arrived personally. Crass was one of the Dominion's most respected security experts. He had managed prison systems for nearly 3 decades. Nothing surprised him anymore. Or so he believed. The moment he reviewed Black Site 7's reports, he knew something was wrong. The pattern felt deliberate, controlled, intelligent, almost as though someone was testing the prison. Learning, adapting, preparing. That realization brought him to Ethan's cell. For several minutes, the two simply stared at one another. Finally, Crass spoke. "You have no weapons." Ethan nodded. "Correct. You have no communication devices." "Correct. You have no allies." "Probably incorrect." The answer immediately caught Crass's attention. "What does that mean?" Ethan leaned back against the wall. For the first time, his smile disappeared. "You think weapons make humans dangerous?" Silence filled the room. Then Ethan said something Crass would never forget. "You've spent weeks taking away my tools." He paused. "You never bothered learning what the tools were for." For reasons he could not explain, the statement unsettled the warden. And deep inside Black Site 7, something moved through the maintenance tunnels. Something the prison's sensors failed to detect. Something that shouldn't have been there. 3 hours later, the station suffered its first major systems failure. And for the first time since its construction, Black Site 7 entered emergency lockdown. The emergency lockdown lasted 19 hours. No one on Black Site 7 had ever seen anything like it. Entire security sectors lost power. Surveillance systems malfunctioned. Maintenance shafts opened and closed without authorization. Several security drones disappeared completely. And throughout the station, personnel continued reporting the same thing. Movement. Something was moving through the walls. At first, administrators blamed fear. The disappearances had already damaged morale. Now the lockdown was making things worse. Every strange noise became a threat. Every shadow became a suspect. Every malfunction felt intentional. Warden Crass refused to accept panic as an explanation. Something was happening. The question was what? The station's central investigation team began reviewing every second of security footage. Thousands of hours. Millions of data points. Nothing. No intruders. No escape attempts. No evidence. The prison remained sealed. The human remained locked inside his cell. Yet the problems continued. 3 days into the lockdown, another technician vanished. This time there were witnesses. The technician had entered a maintenance corridor with 2 co-workers. They reached a junction, turned a corner, and he was simply gone. No alarms. No signs of struggle. No blood. Nothing. The remaining workers practically ran back to security. Their story spread through the station within hours. Fear followed. For the first time, some employees began requesting transfers. Others refused to work alone. Black Site 7 had always been feared by prisoners. Now its staff feared it too. Meanwhile, Ethan Ward remained exactly where the Vrax expected him to be. His cell. His routine never changed. Exercise. Observation. Sleep. Repeat. The consistency bothered Crass. Most prisoners reacted to uncertainty. Most became emotional. Most tried something. The human did none of those things. He looked almost relaxed, as if events were unfolding exactly as expected. That thought haunted the warden. One evening, Crass visited the containment block again. Ethan was sitting quietly against the wall. Reading? That alone was strange. The prison had provided him only a few basic texts. Yet he studied them carefully, over and over. Crass stared through the energy barrier. "You seem calm." Ethan looked up. "I am." The answer irritated him. "Your situation is hopeless." Ethan shrugged. "Maybe." Crass folded his arms. "You think someone is coming for you." The human smiled slightly. "No." The answer surprised him. "No? No one is coming." For a moment, Crass felt relief. Then Ethan continued, "Because nobody needs to." A cold sensation crawled through the warden's spine. The statement made no sense, and yet somehow it felt dangerous. Very dangerous. That same night, another problem emerged. The station's food distribution network failed. Automated systems began sending supplies to incorrect sectors. Storage inventories became scrambled. Security personnel suddenly found themselves without rations. Prisoners received double allocations. Maintenance crews received none. The errors spread rapidly. Engineers worked around the clock attempting repairs. Every solution created new problems. It was almost as if someone understood the system intimately. Someone who knew exactly where to apply pressure. Krass reviewed the failures personally. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Each malfunction was minor. None caused catastrophic damage. Yet together they created chaos. The station wasn't being attacked. It was being destabilized. One small problem at a time. That realization led to a disturbing conclusion. Whoever was responsible understood psychology. The goal wasn't destruction. The goal was pressure. Stress, confusion, fatigue. The exact conditions that caused organizations to fail from within. The exact conditions humans often exploited during wartime. Suddenly, Krass remembered an old intelligence report. Human Special Operations Doctrine. One particular phrase stood out. If you cannot defeat the system directly, teach it to defeat itself. His stomach tightened. The similarities felt too close. Far too close. Days later, the first major breakthrough finally occurred. Security teams discovered hidden markings inside several maintenance corridors. Teeny symbols, almost invisible, placed near access points throughout the station. Investigators immediately began analyzing them. The symbols formed a pattern, a map, not of the prison, of human movement. Shortcuts, blind spots, observation point. Somehow, someone had been studying Black Site 7 for months. The discovery triggered panic at the highest levels, because only one prisoner aboard the station possessed that kind of training, Ethan Ward. But that was impossible. He had never left his cell. The contradiction drove investigators insane. The evidence pointed directly toward him. The circumstances made that impossible. Krass began losing sleep. The more he investigated the human, the worse things became. Every military record told the same story. Ethan rarely won through force. He won through adaptation, through patience, through understanding people. One battle report described how he defeated an entire occupation force without firing a shot. Another detailed how he turned enemy logistics against themselves. A third described the collapse of a heavily fortified world after he spent 6 months studying its administration. Again and again, the pattern repeated. Ethan didn't attack systems. He understood them. Then he encouraged them to fail. The realization arrived like a hammer. The human wasn't dangerous because of his weapons. The weapons had never been the threat. His mind was. That thought became impossible to ignore when another incident occurred. A fight broke out between two security teams. Nothing major, just an argument. Except Black Site 7 almost never experienced internal conflict. The staff were highly trained professionals. Disputes were rare. Now they were becoming common. Investigators eventually traced the argument back to a false report. Someone had altered maintenance schedules. The changes created confusion. The confusion created resentment. The resentment created conflict. Again, a tiny action. Again, a disproportionately large result. Someone was pulling invisible strings. Someone understood exactly how pressure spread through organizations. Someone was weaponizing human behavior. And then the station received a transmission, a public message, broadcast across secure military channels. Its source remained unknown. Its contents were brief. One sentence, just 7 words. Release the human before it's too late. The message stunned everyone. Military intelligence immediately launched an investigation. Nothing. No trace. No identifiable origin. The transmission simply appeared, then vanished. Hours later, another message arrived. Different source. Same sentence. Then another. And another. Soon, messages began arriving from multiple systems. Anonymous. Untraceable. Identical. Release the human before it's too late. Nobody knew who was sending them. Nobody knew why. But for the first time, Crass began considering a possibility he previously dismissed. What if Ethan really did have allies? Not soldiers, not fleets, something else. Something hidden, something patient, something already inside the game. That possibility became terrifyingly real when investigators finally uncovered the source of the disappearances. The missing personnel weren't dead. They were alive. Every one of them. A maintenance team discovered them inside an unused emergency shelter buried deep within the station. Confused, unharmed, fed, protected, they had no memory of how they arrived, no memory of who helped them. Only one detail remained consistent. Each reported finding a handwritten note. A real paper note, almost impossible to obtain aboard BlackSite 7. The message was always the same. No one needed to get hurt. The discovery sent shockwaves through the station, because it revealed something impossible. Whoever was operating inside BlackSite 7 had complete control. They could kill, but chose not to. They could destroy, but didn't. The implication was terrifying. This wasn't revenge. This was restraint. And if restraint ever ended, nobody knew what would happen next. Then, for the first time since his capture, Ethan Ward laughed. Not loudly, not for long, just enough for the surveillance microphones to record it. The footage reached Warden Crass within minutes. He watched it 3 times, then 5, then 10. Because Ethan wasn't laughing at a joke, he was laughing at a realization. And somehow Crass knew exactly what that meant. The human had just learned something. Something important. Something that made him confident. Outside BlackSite 7, events were already moving. And for the first time, the Vrax Dominion was beginning to understand a terrifying truth. They hadn't imprisoned the most dangerous human in the galaxy. They had imprisoned the center of a plan. For the first time since its construction, BlackSite 7 was afraid. Not the prisoners, not the staff, the station itself. Every system aboard the prison seemed trapped in a state of controlled collapse. Nothing catastrophic, nothing dramatic, just enough disruption to keep everyone nervous. Doors malfunctioned. Sensors produced false readings. Communications suffered random interruptions. Supply deliveries arrived late. Personnel schedules became unreliable. Every problem appeared insignificant. Together, they were devastating. Morale continued falling. Trust was evaporating. And Warden Crass was beginning to understand why. Whoever was responsible wasn't trying to destroy BlackSite 7. They were teaching it to destroy itself. The realization kept him awake at night, because there was only one person aboard capable of that kind of operation. Yet Ethan Ward remained locked inside his cell. The contradiction had become maddening. Every investigation led back to him. Every piece of evidence pointed elsewhere. The prison's analysts were trapped in an endless loop. Nothing made sense. Then another transmission arrived. Unlike the others, this one carried a visual attachment. The image spread through Dominion intelligence networks within hours. It showed a rescue ship. Old, damaged, barely operational. Most officers would have ignored it. Crass did not, because he recognized the vessel. It had appeared in a classified military report nearly 12 years earlier. A humanitarian mission. Civilian evacuation. The ship had been trapped behind enemy lines. The crew should have died. Instead, a human special operations team had crossed an active war zone to rescue them. The mission had no strategic value, no military importance, no political gain. The humans did it anyway. Below the image appeared a single sentence. We remember. Nothing else. No demands. No threats. No signature. Just those 2 words. We remember. Within days, more messages appeared. Different species. Different worlds. Different incidents. One image showed a hospital built after a plague outbreak. Another showed a refugee convoy saved during a pirate attack. Another showed children evacuated from a collapsing colony. The pattern soon became obvious. Every image featured a moment when humans had helped someone. And beneath every image appeared the same message. We remember. The Vrax Dominion dismissed the transmissions publicly. Privately, they were becoming concerned. Very concerned. Because the messages weren't coming from governments. They were coming from ordinary people. Millions of them. Across hundreds of worlds, the galaxy was paying attention, and the galaxy appeared increasingly interested in one prisoner. Meanwhile, inside Black Site 7, something else was happening. The station's artificial intelligence began reporting anomalies. Small ones at first: unusual traffic pattern, unexpected personnel movements, behavioral changes. The AI noticed something the staff had missed. People were helping each other more. At first glance, that seemed harmless. Then the AI expanded its analysis. Security officers were sharing information outside official channels. Technicians were bypassing bureaucracy to solve problems faster. Employees from different departments were cooperating. The station's rigid structure was changing. The prison wasn't becoming weaker. It was becoming less controllable. And somehow Ethan Ward sat at the center of it. Without leaving his cell, without issuing orders, without direct communication, Crass finally realized the truth during a routine interrogation. A maintenance worker had been caught entering a restricted sector. The worker wasn't a criminal. He wasn't a rebel. He wasn't even angry. He simply wanted to help solve a problem. When questioned about his actions, the technician said something remarkable: "Everyone keeps waiting for somebody else to fix things." Crass frowned. The statement sounded familiar. Later that night, he searched Ethan's military records. After several hours, he found it. An old interview conducted years earlier. A journalist had asked Ethan why his team succeeded so often. His answer had been simple: because everyone thinks leadership is a rank. The interviewer asked what leadership actually was. Ethan replied, "It's solving the problem standing in front of you." Crass stared at the screen. Suddenly, everything clicked. The human wasn't organizing a rebellion. He was spreading an idea that encouraged people to act independently, to solve problems, to help each other, to stop waiting. The prison's greatest strength had always been control. Now control was slowly disappearing, not because anyone was attacking it, because people were thinking for themselves. The realization terrified him, because ideas could not be confiscated. Ideas could not be locked in storage. Ideas could not be disarmed. And Ethan Ward specialized in ideas. The situation worsened days later. A massive communications blackout struck 3 sectors simultaneously. Backup systems activated immediately. Yet something unexpected occurred. Employees adapted faster than the emergency protocols. Teams created temporary networks. Information continued flowing. Problems continued being solved. The station functioned despite the blackout. Crass should have been relieved. Instead, he felt something close to panic. Because Black Site 7 no longer depended entirely on its command structure, people were learning, improvising, adapting, exactly like humans. Then came the revelation that changed everything. Dominion intelligence finally traced the origin of the mysterious transmissions. The results stunned everyone. The messages were not coordinated. There was no central organizer, no hidden command network, no secret conspiracy. The transmissions were spontaneous, independent, organic. Every world was acting on its own. The galaxy wasn't responding to orders. The galaxy was responding to memory. Humanity had spent centuries helping strangers. Now those strangers were talking to one another. The effect spread like wildfire. Stories connected to other stories. Survivors found other survivors. Entire populations discovered shared experiences. Again and again, the same conclusion emerged. Humans had helped them when nobody else would. And now a human needed help. For the Vrax, the implications were catastrophic. The war had taught them to measure power incorrectly. They counted fleets. They counted armies. They counted weapons. Humans counted relationships. And relationships were proving far more dangerous. Then Black Site 7 suffered its largest failure yet. The primary surveillance grid collapsed. Not permanently, just long enough. 8 minutes, 483 seconds. An eternity inside a maximum security prison. Every alarm activated. Every response team mobilized. Every sector entered lockdown. When visibility returned, one thing had changed. The walls of the central security hub now displayed a message. Nobody knew how it got there. Nobody saw who wrote it. The words covered nearly 20 meters of reinforced metal. Every camera recorded the same image. Every screen aboard the station displayed it. 3 simple sentences. You took his weapons. You took his technology. You never understood the human. Panic spread instantly, because for the first time, the unknown force inside Black Site 7 had spoken directly, and it sounded confident, very confident. Warden Crass rushed to Ethan's cell. The human was waiting, almost as if he expected the visit. Crass stared through the energy barrier. "What are you?" For several seconds, Ethan said nothing. Then he stood, slowly, calmly, and for the first time since arriving at Black Site 7, he looked directly into the warden's eyes. "I'm not the dangerous part." The answer chilled him, because Ethan sounded completely sincere. Then the human stepped closer to the barrier. "You still think this story is about me?" Crass felt his pulse quicken. "What does that mean?" Ethan glanced toward the station beyond the walls, toward the countless systems and worlds beyond Black Site 7, toward the growing movement spreading across the galaxy. And then he delivered the sentence that would soon haunt the Dominion. "The moment you captured me." He paused. "You reminded the galaxy who humans are." Silence filled the room. Neither man spoke. Neither moved. Then emergency alarms erupted across the station. Not another malfunction. Not another systems failure. Something far worse. Long-range sensors had detected hundreds of ships emerging from hyperspace. Not a fleet. Not an invasion force. Something unprecedented. Civilian vessels, medical ships, rescue transports, cargo carriers, exploration craft, ships from dozens of species, all heading toward Black Site 7, and all broadcasting the same message. We remember. The Vrax Dominion had prepared for fleets. They had prepared for soldiers. They had prepared for special operations teams. They had even prepared for a human rescue mission. What they had not prepared for was this. Hundreds of ships continued arriving from hyperspace. Then thousands, not warships, not military formations, civilian vessels, medical transports, cargo haulers, research ships, exploration craft, rescue vessels, ships from every corner of known space. And every single one broadcast the same message. We remember. The phrase echoed across Black Site 7's communication networks, across Dominion military channels, across public broadcasts, across the entire galaxy. Nobody could stop it. Nobody could suppress it, because it wasn't coming from one source. It was coming from everywhere. The movement had become too large, too widespread, too human. Inside Black Site 7, Warden Crass stood frozen in the command center. The tactical displays were filling with new arrivals every minute. Analysts struggled to keep up. Species that had once been enemies were arriving together. Former rivals were coordinating operations. Civilian organizations were sharing resources. Independent worlds were contributing supplies. Nobody appeared interested in war. They wanted one thing: the release of Ethan Ward. And more importantly, they wanted the galaxy to remember why. The Vrax leadership immediately ordered defensive mobilization. Military fleets were dispatched, weapons systems activated, security forces prepared for confrontation. Yet something strange happened. The approaching armada made no hostile moves, no attack formations, no targeting locks, no threats. Instead, they transmitted stories, thousands of them, accounts from survivors, doctors, refugees, colonists, children, ordinary people. Every message described a moment when humanity had helped someone. A rescue, a sacrifice, a promise kept, a life saved. The story spread faster than any military response. Soon billions were watching, and for the first time, the Dominion realized they were losing something far more important than a prison station. They were losing the narrative. The galaxy was remembering, and memory could be more powerful than fear. Then another crisis erupted inside Black Site 7. The station's workforce began refusing certain orders. Not violently, not rebelliously, simply refusing. Technicians would not disable life support backups. Medical staff would not participate in emergency casualty projections. Security officers questioned unnecessary force. Employees began making independent decisions, The prison's command structure started unraveling, not because of sabotage, because people were thinking the very thing Ethan Ward had quietly encouraged. The station had spent months trying to remove weapons. Meanwhile, the human had been spreading ideas, and ideas were impossible to confiscate. Crass finally understood. The prison had never contained Ethan. It had amplified him. Every restriction, every interrogation, every attempt at control had only increased interest in the human. The Dominion had turned one prisoner into a symbol. And symbols were dangerous, far more dangerous than soldiers. Outside the station, the civilian armada continued growing. Then something unexpected happened. Dominion citizens began joining it. Entire communities organized support convoys. Families sent supplies. Former military personnel volunteered assistance. The movement crossed political boundaries, species boundaries, historical boundaries. The galaxy wasn't uniting because humans were strong. The galaxy was uniting because humans had mattered. That realization terrified Dominion leadership. Because there was no military solution. You could defeat fleets. You could destroy armies. You could occupy planets. But how do you fight gratitude? How do you fight memory? How do you fight millions of people who simply refuse to forget kindness? The answer was simple. You couldn't. Then BlackSite 7 suffered its final failure. Not a technical failure, not a security failure, a moral one. A young security officer approached Ethan's cell. The officer had spent months watching events unfold, watching the stories spread, watching ordinary people arrive from across the galaxy. Finally, he asked a question. Why did humans help everyone? Ethan looked at him calmly. The answer came immediately. Because someday, we might need help too. The officer stood silent. Then he asked another question. Did you know this would happen? Ethan smiled. No. The answer surprised him. No. No human helps people expecting repayment. The officer stared. Ethan continued. We help because it's the right thing to do. The simplicity of the statement hit harder than any speech, because everyone aboard the station already knew it was true. The evidence surrounded them. The entire galaxy was proof. Hours later, the officer made a decision. Then another officer made the same decision. Then another. One by one, personnel across BlackSite 7 stopped participating in the prison's mission. Nobody staged a rebellion. Nobody seized control. They simply refused to continue. The system finally reached its breaking point. And when systems break, they rarely do so dramatically. They simply stop working. The prison administration collapsed. Operations halted. Command authority evaporated. For the first time in its history, BlackSite 7 stood still. The Dominion could no longer maintain control. The prison had defeated itself. Exactly as Ethan had predicted. Exactly as humans often did. Not through overwhelming force, through understanding, through patience, through people. Warden Crass found Ethan one final time. The human stood waiting near the energy barrier. Neither man spoke immediately. Eventually, Crass shook his head. We took everything from you. Ethan nodded. You tried. The warden almost laughed. After months of frustration, fear, and confusion, the truth finally seemed obvious. They had searched for hidden weapons, hidden technology, hidden allies. They had been looking in the wrong place. The weapon was never equipment. The weapon was human nature itself. Adaptability, empathy, persistence, creativity, the ability to inspire others, the ability to build trust, the ability to keep going. No prison could confiscate those things. No empire could lock them away. Crass finally deactivated the containment field. The barrier vanished. For the first time since his capture, Ethan Ward stepped out of his cell. No alarm sounded. No soldiers rushed forward. No battle occurred. The moment felt strangely peaceful, as though the story had always been moving toward this outcome. Together, they walked toward the station's primary docking hub. The civilian armada waited outside. Millions watched the live broadcast. Entire worlds held their breath. Ethan emerged onto the docking platform. Silence followed. Then, hundreds of ships activated their exterior lights simultaneously. The darkness of space became filled with light. A tribute. A thank you. A promise. Many expected Ethan to give a speech. He didn't. Instead, he looked out at the countless vessels, at the species humanity had helped, at the people who had come, and he simply nodded. That was enough, because everyone understood. The rescue was never about one man. It was about what that man represented. The galaxy had not gathered to save the last human. The galaxy had gathered because humanity had spent centuries saving everyone else. Years later, historians would study the fall of Black Site 7. Military experts would analyze every mistake. Political leaders would debate the consequences. Yet one conclusion appeared in every serious analysis. The Vrax Dominion failed because it misunderstood humanity. It believed human strength came from weapons. It believed human influence came from military power. It believed humans survived because they fought harder. The truth was much simpler. Humans survived because they connected, because they helped, because they remembered people. And because people remembered them, a memorial was eventually built near the former prison station. It contained no weapons, no war trophies, no battle honors, only a single inscription, a lesson the galaxy would never forget. They took away his weapons. Then they discovered humans were never the weapon. Humanity was. And that was why no prison could ever truly contain them.